Adrian Wojnarowski. Denver Nuggets forward Michael Porter Jr. is progressing to be cleared for on-court contact within the next week, freeing a path for him to return to the lineup sometime in March. His agent, Mark Bartelstein of Priority Sports, tell ESPN. And before we continue, I want to talk about this because I listened to The Athletic podcast daily, which covers the NBA, and they had Matt Moore on the other day. And Matt Moore said, okay, that Michael Porter Jr. is actually further ahead in his recovery than Jamal Murray is. My apology right there. And he said the reason why Michael Porter Jr. will most likely come or return back to the lineup later than Jamal Murray is due to the fact that with the back, there is actually a greater chance of re-injuring his back than Jamal Murray, re-injuring his knee. Even though Jamal Murray is still dealing with swelling in his knee. That was also reported by Matt Moore of Action Network on the podcast. And he still has swelling in the knee. But Jamal should be back before Michael Porter Jr. That being said, it seems like they could both potentially be back in March. And if they do come back, I expect them both to be brought back, similar to how D'Angelo Russell was brought back for the Timberwolves, where they had him come off the bench for the first 4 to 6 weeks, and then they moved him back to the starting lineup. And I think that'll do that to shake off the rust for both of them. But again, Michael Porter Jr., Matt Moore did hint that if the Nuggets feel like if there's any reason whatsoever that they should hold out Michael Porter Jr., then they are willing to let Michael Porter Jr. sit out the rest of the season because they are more concerned about his long-term health than having him back for this season for the postseason run. While Michael Porter Jr. is expected to make a full recovery, he hopefully seems to be right now on pace to make a March return sometime in March. Now, hopefully nothing happens, and that does happen. He comes back in March. What I do want to know is Jamal Murray, is a guy who, as of a few days ago of the podcast, which was Wednesday or Thursday when I listened to it, he was still experiencing swelling in his knee. And this was after he had been cleared to return, to do some sort of workout. So I do wonder how that's going to all go down, but I expect this to all go well. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you guys agree with me? If Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray come back by March, this team just got richer. This is already a really good team, and they already are super deep. But imagine how much deeper they would be with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. returning and being able to have some playing time before the playoff starts. That would be great, so they can get back into rhythm and shake off the rust. Because we saw what happened to, DeAndre Hunter for the Hawks when he came back. It took him a while to shake off the rust, and he really didn't shake it off all the playoffs. And he would have been helpful for them. So I think Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray being at 100% or being ready for the playoffs and having some game time in the regular season before the regular season ends would be crucial. What are your thoughts?